Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this whole video we are heading off to South Africa. I get to do my South African accent again. Yes. But first it's Sweden, then England, then South Africa, then England again, then South Africa again. Something like that, and there's a few spots in between. It's a whole thing, you know, there's a lot going on in this whole one, but mainly it's based around a couple, Shrien and Anni Dewani, and their honeymoon to Cape Town. And, you know, what transpired from there. So, let's give it a go. So first off, we're hitting Sweden via Uganda to meet the Hindocha family, of which Anni, later Anni Dewani, she was a member of. She was born in Mariestad, Sweden in 1982. Her parents, Indian descent, but living in Uganda, well, they moved, actually asylumed to Sweden when the president of Uganda, that's Idi Amin, ordered Asians to be expelled from the country. That was the last King of Scotland guy. Not sure if he actually was though, someone should check on that. I haven't seen the movie. So the Hindocha family were given asylum in Sweden, and that's where Anni Hindocha would later be born. She grew up there in her hometown of Mariestad and later got a degree in engineering, after which she worked as a product designer for Ericsson. It was in 2009 that Anni would meet her future husband, Shrien Dewani. Anni had just popped over to London. She was staying with a cousin in Luton, just outside the city, and that's where things, kicked off. Shrien, his mother, like Anni's, was from Uganda, and his father came to the UK via Kenya. A lot of people of Indian descent here, diaspora, they live in East Africa, just in case you were wondering. That goes back to like colonial days where the British were building railroads and the Indians built them. Shrien's father, a very successful man in the UK, specifically Bristol, he ended up launching a chain of care homes, and the Dewani family had sterling to spare. Shrien, privately educated economics graduate from Manchester, then worked at the accounting firm Deloitte, is that how you say it? Before moving back to help run the family business, those care homes, retirement communities. Sorry. So Shrien and Anni were instantly attracted to. It hit off right away. They went on a few dates, and then they began a long distance relationship. Him in England, her in Sweden. They argued from time to time, maybe more, and even broke up in January 2010. But 2 months later, they patched things up. And Anni, deciding if this was going to work, then it's balls to the wall time, nut up or shut up, she moved to the UK. 2 months later, right, in May 2010, they were engaged. Now, they still had, their bit of issues here now and then. Things weren't, magically perfect because this is real life. But, it was great. It seems Shrien had some issues with hormones. Their ability to, have children together was called into question. They still argued, almost called off the wedding, but in October 2010, they pulled the trigger with a lavish Hindu ceremony in Mumbai. It was a 3-day event, a festival. Hundreds of guests, you got elephants, you got the snazzy outfits, the dancing. You got it all. The Dewanis, now including Anni, were devout Hindus, so after the wedding, they returned to Bristol to celebrate Diwali. And then it was time for the honeymoon. South Africa was the destination, arriving there after a 12-hour flight, fucking hell, on the 7th of November. Less than a week later, 28-year-old Anni Dewani was murdered. The circumstances surrounding her death, bizarre to say the least. On the night of the 13th of November, in Gugulethu Township, southern Cape Town, pretty poor enough area, Shrien Dewani was found by a passerby. He was extremely distraught, extremely upset. He was telling this passerby he needed to call the police, and I mean like right now. He said they were driving and they were hijacked. Right, the driver, Zola Tongo, was thrown out. Then Shrien Dewani was thrown out, and they drove off. The hijackers drove off that night with Anni in the back seat. the police were called. The search for the car, the search for Annie, began that very early morning. Now this is a pretty built up area, shacks kinda everywhere, so needle meet haystack. Something like this happening on your honeymoon. Nightmare fuel. Shrien, Zola, the police all regrouped at the Hotel Cape Grace, and the hunt was on. Though immediately what stood out in this situation was, well, the Dewanis, a very wealthy, beautiful couple on honeymoon. What were they doing in a pretty poor, reportedly very dangerous part of town that late at night? When Shrien and Annie first arrived in South Africa, they took a domestic flight to the Kruger National Park, where they stayed for a few nights, taking in the lions and the zebras and crocs and all that. They then flew back to Cape Town on the 12th, and as they were getting a taxi from the airport to their hotel, that's when they met the driver, Zola Tongo. Zola, he took them to the hotel. They seemed to be busy mates all of a sudden. They were having such a great time. They were like, here, let's stay in touch. You can be our guide around the city. No better man. So then that takes us to the very next day, which was the 13th of November. That day, the couple spent it mostly hanging around the hotel. They went to the bar, after which they arranged that just before 8 PM, Zola would pick them up, take them sightseeing around the city. They went, they had dinner, and were back in the car at 10:30. Then in the car, as they were driving, Shrien said he wanted to see, he wanted to see as much as he could. And they were staying in a, 5-star luxury hotel resort shit. They wanted to, get away from They wanted to see the real Africa, right? Away from the polished, the usual shit you see everywhere. So Zola, he said he'd take them to a township where they could see, more authentic side. So as they were driving along the highway, just as they pulled off, they were about to take a right turn. The car was stopped when a guy ran up to the car, started banging on it, and he had a gun in his hand. Zola was thrown out of the car. One of the hijackers got in the driver's seat, and the other got in the back beside the Dewanis. Shrien's luxury watch, his wallet, his keys, phone, they were all taken from him, and they drove for about 20 minutes. And he was, hysterical, maybe as you can imagine. And they said, we don't want to hurt you, we just want the car, but we're gonna let you go separately. Shrien was out first, and that takes us here. Zola Tongo, the driver, when he was interviewed about what happened, the story matched what I just said, which was Shrien's story. At approximately 8 AM on the 14th, the vehicle was found. Annie was in the back seat, and she was dead. She had been shot in the neck. Though she had a few wounds, the shot, it went through her hands, grazed her chest, and entered and exited the neck. She was in a, defensive posture when she was shot. She had grip marks on her, like she had been restrained, held down. She hadn't been sexually assaulted, though. Her expensive items, jewelry, they were missing. Shrien was devastated. When the investigation began, there was, just a few red flags. Namely, kind of everything that happened. For a start, 2 witnesses were just let go. Second of all, they said, why were they there? And then thirdly, why? They said they just wanted a car. Well, why did they just leave it on the side of the road with a body in the back? They would have dumped the body in the middle of nowhere, taken the car and stripped it, if that's what they wanted. It was just weird that they ended up where they did. Their trip, the Dewani's trip of the previous night, it didn't make any sense. Even the restaurant they went to was not a good one, far from the hotel. Tourists going into where they ended up at that time was odd and unsafe. When Zola was questioned, he was asked, why would you take them there? It's not safe even during the day. But he said, the Dewanis, they wanted to go, they were paying, so he goed. Shrien had some conflicting statements about the night, too. For example, he said that, when he was giving his original statement, he said he gave the hijackers their engagement rings, just gave them everything. Yet later, he told the police he had hidden the engagement ring in the car. And it was found in the car. It was 25 grand, so I'd imagine he'd want to hang on to it. He actually wanted to leave South Africa ASAP, and he did so 3 days after the murder, leaving with Annie's body and Annie's dad, who would come over. Fingerprints were successfully taken from the car, and they led the police to a suspect, Khalil Ngani. Excuse my butchering of this language. He was arrested on the 16th, and he confessed when confronted with the evidence. He had a record, but not a violent one at all. It was kind of surprising he did what he did. Well, he confessed to it. But he told the police everything, and he even, identified the other guy. He said it was the other guy who had shot Annie after she refused to give her bag over. He gave them a bit of a runaround as to who the other guy was, first identifying someone who was not involved at all. Then it turned out to be Mziwamadoda Kwabe. He, again, like Ngani, had a record, but nothing violent in his past. Again, like the other guy, he spoke up almost immediately about what happened. He implicated another guy named Monday, who worked reception at a hotel, not the Dewani hotel, a different one. And when the police followed up with this and spoke to Monday, he said that Zola Tongo, the driver, came to him asking for a hit man. Monday put Zola in touch with the two actual hijackers. See, shit's getting pretty real. This was not a random, carjacking. And then, apparently, according to the confessions of the hijackers, Zola said the husband wanted the wife dead. A few days later, Zola Tongo was then arrested. And these four conspirators, not counting Shrien, we'll get to him later. So you got the driver, Zola Tongo, the two hijackers, and the middleman, who was Monday. None of them had a history of this sort of thing. It was odd, But Zola Tongo, he too said the husband organised it. They met alone in the hotel car park after they arrived, and he said Shrien was going to pay 15 grand rand, which is a little over 2 grand US dollars, to each person involved. He wanted it to look like a random robbery. Meanwhile, Shrien was back in London preparing for Annie's funeral. Attending a funeral he had, it appeared to others, zero interest in or respect for. Just wasn't having it. Shrien, it was said, he had PTSD and depression from the whole experience. The police, however, they had to follow up, right? They had to follow up with the claims the killers made. What they said, that there was a whole thing here. So was Shrien involved? That was the question. There was one point when Shrien was seen leaving the hotel to go to Zola's car, where he remained for about 10 minutes. That's when Zola said they spoke about it. CCTV matched his story. The day of the murder, they were seen driving off together, allegedly to exchange currency to pay the hijackers. Zola Tongo told them this too. They also had proof that Zola and Shrien were texting each other that very night, the night of the hijacking, while they were driving around, while Annie was in the car, while Annie was beside him talking about her murder. Okay, well, no, they never actually got the contents of those text messages. They were never recorded, but they did have, proof via cell phone towers that they had been texting each other while they were in the car together with Annie. Why would they text each other while they were inside a car together, if not about a murder plot, while the victim was beside? The morning after the hijacking, Zola and Shrien met in the hotel before Annie's body was found. Zola said Shrien was asking if the job had been done. There was no microphone on the camera, so you can't hear what they were saying, but at one point, Shrien looks around. Zola said this was because he told Shrien there was CCTV in that room. A couple of days after the murder, Zola and Shrien met at the hotel. Zola said this was when he was paid for the plot. Shrien walked in with a white envelope, left without. Zola had it. So, what you thinking? Yeah. Annie's final texts to friends back home told how she was deeply unhappy with Shrien. They shouldn't have gotten married. Zola Tongo took a plea deal, told everything in exchange for 18 years. This involved naming Shrien as the orchestrator. This would mean the South African police, they had a warrant for his arrest. And he was arrested for a conspiracy to murder in December 2010. He was out on bail relatively quickly. In London, Shrien, with mounting suspicion and rumours abounding, he hired a publicist, a fella named Max Clifford.
I've met him, I've spoken to him, I've looked him in the eye, I've talked him through, I've asked him all the questions that journalists have been asking in all circumstances, and I totally believe him.
I'm sure UK people out there will recognise him as a giant piece of shit. Obviously, portraying him as a loving husband, that started up. As did the rumours about Shrien, other ones. Rumours were going around that Shrien was secretly gay. This was all over the gay bars in Bristol. Apparently he frequented them pretty often, and then, put two and two together, really. This was denied, of course. Must be joking. Then a guy came forward to reporters, his real name, who cares what his real name is, because he went by the name German Master. That's pretty rad, dude. He looked rad too. Look at him, cigar, cool uniform. Oh wait, you mean he's not an Indiana Jones villain? He was a sex worker, and he told a lot of stories about Shrien, because he knew him pretty well. Inside and out. Shrien was also active on Gaydar, a gay dating website, under the name Asian Subguy24. So that was that. Now, if that had anything to do with the murder, well, that's what the police were starting to think. Pretty shitty, you gotta feel kind of sorry for Shrien that he kind of got blasted in the newspapers, that he didn't feel, comfortable coming out. But it was really about the murder. He fought extradition to South Africa. His defense said he was suffering from depression, PTSD, and there was a serious risk he might harm himself if he was extradited. This went on for 4 years. Now, in the meantime, here's something for you to chew on, right? In February 2011, lawyers for 2 of the accused men, the hijackers, lawyers for them spoke to the Guardian newspaper. They said their clients had been tortured, beaten, suffocated, forced to confess. That there was pressure on the cops to solve this quickly, and the cops got their confessions any way they could. Bruises and all. And then here's something else, right? Get a load of this. There was an angle to this case that was bigger than just the case that impacted South Africa as a whole. See, they had just had the World Cup. It was tickety-boo. And then the murder of Anni Dewani became headline news. Not looking too great for tourism, which they hoped, would rocket after the tournament. Random robbery? Random murders? Don't like that. But what if it wasn't random? What if South Africa was actually really safe? This was a plot. So you go there as a tourist, you'd be fine. Then you'd feel safe. Right? It's not going to happen to you. It's like that thing, the Joker in The Dark Knight. He's like, it's all part of the plan. Right? So people don't lose their minds. South Africa is safe as shit. This wasn't random robbery, hijacking. Not at all. You gotta watch out for that Shrien Dewani, though. He, danger follows him. There's also some evidence that Anni Dewani's shooting may have been an accident. That she wasn't, intentionally killed. The gun just went off. There was never any evidence that Shrien was involved other than the words of, the accused. His story never changed. The other men were naming Shrien because they wanted to cut a deal, shift blame onto him. And you can see how it might be in, South African tourism's best interests to find an Englishman guilty rather than South Africans wholly responsible. And the series of events that the investigators were going on was that Shrien Dewani asked the first taxi driver he met once he set foot off the plane to find hitmen to kill his wife. And this guy just said yes. Seems implausible. And this was all because he was secretly gay and he came from a background where divorce wasn't, accepted? Right. What about this clip? Well, the defense said Shrien was simply paying Zola for driving them around. He had provided a service. There was a plot, Shrien's defense said. But it never involved Shrien. He was a victim too. The plot was simply to rob this rich couple. Zola Tongo, he picked him up from the airport. He seen it, friggin' Gucci suitcases, Dolce & Gabbana, 40 grand watches, all that kind of shit. So he started contacting his buddies, said, hey, we got a couple of, tourists here, might need relieving of their shit, and Annie's death was an accident. Monde was not prosecuted. Zola Tongo got 18 years. Kwabe, 25 years. Ngani pleaded not guilty. He said the confession was given under duress. He was convicted and received life. He later died in prison of a brain tumor.
It's been very difficult for my family. We are just focusing on this case at the moment, and it's hard to even start to make the grieving process for Annie yet, because there is so many questions we need answer to, and it's been a nightmare. I can't sleep at nights. I can't even work. The only focus I have is getting justice for her. Today he's getting extradited, and that's one step closer towards what we are seeking for, that's justice for her. It's been very frustrating legal process.
Shrien was extradited to South Africa in 2014. His trial began in October of that year.
In the dock and on trial, Shrien Dewani. The British businessman has spent 4 years fighting extradition. Now he's fighting to clear his name, as he denied plotting to kill his wife days after their marriage. Wearing badges showing her face, Mrs. Dewani's family travelled from their home in Sweden to the court in Cape Town. Inside, along with Mr. Dewani's family, they heard details about the wedding, the honeymoon and the murder. It's believed the prosecution will present his sexuality as the motive for wanting Mrs. Dewani killed. He denies all the charges and says he would never have orchestrated the murder of his wife.
He pleaded not guilty. The prosecution said he was secretly gay and had Annie killed, to get out of the marriage. The defense said in fact he was bisexual and it had nothing to do with anything. Shrien's sexuality came up again and again and again. But did he have his wife killed? Really is the question I think they should have been asking. The witnesses who testified against him were up. Zola Tongo took the stand, especially, as he was the one who said he spoke to Shrien directly about the murder. And he stuck to his story, but the defense managed to find cracks in his memory. In their memories, especially Mr. Tongo, blank spots in their stories, contradictions and lies. 2 months after the trial began, the case against Shrien Dewani was dismissed.
Mr. Tongo, who was the only witness who could link the accused to the conspiracy, gave evidence to the court which is so improbable and contains so many mistakes, lies and inconsistency that one simply cannot know where the lies end and where the truth begins. I accept that at this stage of the proceedings, the credibility of a witness plays a limited role, but in my view, the evidence of these witnesses is so replete with fundamental contradictions on the key components of the state case that I can all but ignore it. In making this finding, I take into account that all three witnesses, Mr. Tongo, Mr. Malombo and Mr. Kwabe, are intelligent people and therefore more than capable of attempting to twist their version to implicate the accused. There are many unanswered questions about what happened on this fateful night. I realize there is strong public opinion that the accused should be placed on his defense. I take note of that. I have heard the plight of the Hindocha family, that they would like answers to the question. I have, however, taken an oath of office to uphold the rule of law and to administer justice without fear, favor, or prejudice. That I cannot do if I permit public opinion to influence my application of the law. If any court permitted public opinion or emotion to influence their judgments, it would lead to anarchy. In the circumstances, I make the following order. The application in terms of Section 174 of the Criminal Procedure Act is granted. The accused is found not guilty on this charge.
He was free to go.
And now Anni Dewani's parents say the man accused of killing their daughter lied to her and he lied to them.
And so ends this long, convoluted and ultimately murky as hell case. It's hard to say what really happened. What it is, it's a lot of sadness. In this one, the beautiful, smart, intelligent Annie, she was taken. in the prime of her life. Her ashes were scattered over a lake in Sweden. Shrien, you gotta feel sorry for him too. For a start, he had to hide he was gay, and then his life was dragged, through pure shite for years, not counting the fact that, whatever, she was murdered, and he was there, and you can understand why he would have PTSD from that. I don't believe he had anything to do with it at all. Just holiday gone wrong. Definitely the honeymoon from hell, that's for sure. So there you go, no winners in this one. And the stories I tell, is there ever? Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you doing so, being here till the end of the video with me. It really does mean a lot. So here, go on. Happy Christmas, happy holidays, whatever you're celebrating. Hope you're having a good celebration. Yeah. And please take care of yourselves, because I love you. Oh my God.